What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Horror Show podcast. I'm Cecil Laird.
I'm Producer Dave.
And we are here to talk some horror, you guys. A little
and
less
drink
structure,
some vodka.
but yeah, first,
I was told there'd be vodka drinking.
First, we're going to prepare. So, cheers.
Cheers
senor.
to the camera.
We did a lot of work the last 2 days.
Audience.
We cleaned Castle Horror Show.
Yeah.
And it took some doing.
Castle Horror Show. It was quite literally the horror house.
You're not wrong. Whew.
Oh, that's tough.
That's tough. So, guys, here's the thing. We're behind on podcasts, and let me explain why. Doing 2 episodes a day via video is tough enough. Sitting down, taking time to do full podcasts.
Well, we forgot that we can use the podcast to bitch about how many videos that we make every week.
That's true. We could do. Honestly, you and I could do a podcast every week, and it would be the podcast. But so what I've done is I've essentially ported over a lot of our longer form episodes from the video show to sort of make up for it. But I've been wanting to get back to doing the podcast because it's a fun outlet that doesn't require a lot of video stuff, although now there's a video component. So it doesn't quite have the leniency that it did before. But I thought that a fun topic might be, since Producer Dave, I practically have to drag tooth and nail to a lot of horror things. If he'd have his druthers, he would not watch horror stuff if he had his options, as I just said with his Jesus Christmas. The vodka's taking hold, guys.
Druthers.
So here's the thing.
I wouldn't say that's particularly true.
You like horror that is good enough to bring to your attention.
My problem is when it comes to horror, my suspension of disbelief is much more difficult to suspend.
Your disbelief is much harder to suspend?
Because that's what, I thought about and worked on. And I enjoy a good horror film, don't get me wrong. I would just, if I got to choose between seeing the new Halloween and the new Harry Potter movie, I would choose to see the new Harry Potter movie.
Well, that's a special circumstance. You'd choose that over anything.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I had the choice to see the Venom or...
That's true. Or
Halloween, and I chose to see Venom. I do like a good horror film, but for the most part, I have a very hard time... actually getting into the horror films.
Buying into the premise?
I mean, I buy into the premise. I buy into most of it. I just am not surprised or impressed by stuff when I see it, even though I'm like, I probably should be impressed by that. That was a really well done. Like, I can recognize...
Is that because of the work you've done on
films? I think it's partially that, partially because I've always been stuck doing, stuff that's super low budget, and you have to do it all for free and however you can figure out how to do it.
That person's still making movies somehow.
But that being said, I just think that there's more to horror than that, and I think horror can be better than what we see a lot of in independent horror.
Yeah, that's true.
Because there are for every good one, there's 9 bad ones. Yeah.
Well, that goes towards the point of what I thought this podcast should be about. I thought, since Producer Dave is available, let's pick Producer Dave's brain and see what he considers scary. So he doesn't find very much scary, but
a good, I'll say a good startle, like that people call jump scare. I don't really consider it a scare. It's more like you get startled by the noise or the video of it, but every once in a while you can actually create that sort of false scare. And then just in that moment that you're relieved, you're like, okay, that didn't give me that. Oh, God. That still happens to me sometimes in films. And whenever that does happen, I think, I've actually fallen into my suspension of disbelief. Now, it's not that hard with a good horror movie. It is hard with a bad horror movie. Sometimes I will get 2 minutes into a film and be like, oh, no, And I feel bad saying that. But I have very limited time to devote to, stuff that I'm not going to enjoy.
Mm-hmm. No,
so,
you're not alone there.
Yeah.
So let me ask though, like, you've experienced a lot of horror through this show, but then you also experienced a lot of horror through me previous to the show. What horror are you okay with? Like, what can you watch without getting particularly bummed out? Like, can you watch? Let me just run through the bunch, and you tell me what you can watch and what you can't watch.
We'll
okay?
do it one at a time, though.
Okay. Ghost movies. Paranormal.
Sometimes. I mean, again, if I'm in the right mood, yeah. If I, you know, it's just some of them are like so rote and so routine and so formulaic that it's like, why watch them? You know, there's always, you know, I didn't think I'd like Supernatural, and I ended up really connecting not to the ghost, to the brother and father thing. But I mean, that
still a good show in
right,
season 14. It's
right.
crazy.
Well, I mean, the whole God aspect really got to me on that, not necessarily the ghost aspect.
He was only there for about a season and a half.
The thing is, I actually do believe in ghosts, but I just don't believe in the sort of the thematic TV interpretation of ghosts.
So how do you believe in them?
Well, I think they're extra dimensional. They're just in the other. They're on the other side.
You think it is us,
and I think
that
it's
have
like
just moved on, but not fully, or what?
Well, I mean,
you tell me. I'm curious. This is your interpretation.
Well,
how do you see it?
It's a lot. It could be a lot of things. So,
but how do you see it?
Well, like I said, it could. I literally see it as it could literally be a lot of things. It could be yourself from your future, where you're dead, and you're looking back on your life when you have all the time in the world as you're dying, or when you're in the ether or the neither.
Okay, I don't know if this is what you meant, but this is. Producer Dave and I have this thing where he says something, and then my mind spins off in a completely different direction that is almost film-worthy in and of itself. Usually,
right. I'm a muse.
You are, but like, what if all of our experiences is just us reliving our life in the moment before we're actually dying?
Right.
Like, what if you and me having this podcast is just the equivalent of me reliving this particular moment as I'm dying, whenever I'm dying?
Yeah. And like, well, even after you're dead, because your brain still has energy for a few minutes after you die.
7 minutes,
yeah. Anyway, like it's
according to the Nightmare on Elm Street remake,
you know, bouncing around in there. So like that, and since
we've still got 6 more minutes to play,
right? And Inception told us that even a second could be 100 years.
Yeah.
So you know, you literally could be trying to interact with your own self through your subconscious. That is traveling through time into your brain, and your brain is then perceiving this stuff as like, you're such an idiot. Why are you still with this guy? And you knock over a glass, you know, and like, you don't mean to knock over the glass, but you think that nobody did it, but you actually did it
in the
to
future.
Yourself.
Yeah.
But you didn't do it.
And it's like, it's one of those things that, you know, if you are your future self, you're like, take notice! Yeah. That shit just doesn't happen!
Slam the doors.
Yeah.
Like, get out of this fucking house. It's not good for you.
Meanwhile,
Nothing good's going to happen.
You're like, this is weird.
No, but I also...
Let's continue talking.
I get the whole, like, you know, Ginny was murdered and by the husband.
You say Ginny?
Yeah.
Are you in the Weasley universe right now?
Ginny was murdered, you know, and Harry goes rogue trying to get her killer. And then she comes back as a ghost, and she's like, Harry, don't do this. And he's like, oh, yeah, that's right. And then he cuts his own head off.
Fanfic? Did you, what? Jesus.
No.
What?
My fanfic involved...
Careful.
Less Harry and Ginny, more Ginny and Hermione.
Less Harry and Ginny, or more less Harry and Ginny clothes?
Well, Luna, Ginny, and Hermione were on a mission.
Hey now!
In a very cold environment.
Yes!
And, you know.
And nothing quite like human skin.
Yeah, they were hunting down
each other up.
Kidnappers. I
want to hear this story.
Yeah, well.
I want to go to there. All right, so...
Does anyone know a spell for being very cold?
Yes.
Yes, it's called Spreadicus Legicus.
All right. Woo, careful before we get too derailed. So that's ghosts. That was one of them.
But I think also ghosts can literally be just like they're represented in the movies, just not the way they're represented. Because I think there is a veil. I think they can't come back across. It's like that scene at the end of Interstellar.
View, but we can't interact.
Yeah, I don't think you can cross. I think people who see stuff or perceive stuff are perceiving stuff, but it's not like they represent it in the movie. with some spiritual entity that you can see or any of this other stuff. I think it's more along the lines of we're all connected to all the dimensions. And it's like, you know,
it's all the universe.
Someone's
It's
walking on my grave,
universal...
deja vu, all those feelings are just, you know, that's part of the universe talking to you. And it could be lots of different things.
I'm not against the whole universal one, you know, when we die, we rejoin the universal consciousness,
right?
Sort of
but,
thing. The universal
in essence,
consciousness being God, essentially.
Right, but in essence, we do rejoin it, but we retain like the memories of who
do we retain who we
well, like the Matrix. I feel like the Matrix did a great.
That's like the number one reason I would love ghosts to exist.
Imagine it literally is the Matrix, and that you're just
I don't like that though.
But that you're just reborn, like
that means we've already killed Earth.
No. I don't
want to have already killed Earth. I want to kill Earth.
No. I just mean like not in the robots have taken over sense. The sense that our consciousness is a battery, and every once in a while it needs to be recharged by dying and going back and joining up with the great consciousness and then being reborn.
Even less than that, recharged with information sometimes.
Yeah.
Or just recharged
or erased
experience.
Or erased of information.
Yeah. Honestly,
I do believe there are things that can stay in your soul.
I'll tell you one thing, just as a side,
and you're
going
to be lost.
Discussion.
Yeah.
I never liked Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind until I had a relationship that I really wanted
well,
to
of course, yeah.
Now I'm like, what a brilliant concept.
You're like, zap me, please.
Please zap me. There is a particular relationship that you guys can appreciate, considering your viewers of the channel, that I would love to erase.
Or listeners of the podcast.
Or listeners of the podcast. Either way. I almost had to re-upload an episode that particular person I'm referring to was in. Mm-hmm. But luckily
she who shall not be named.
But the video had clear audio of the episode we were reacting to, so I couldn't just cut the video. I would have had to cut a lot of parts out of it, and I'm not going to take the time to do that. So it was like an American Horror Story episode reaction.
No.
And I just was like, I'm not going to cut out the audio too. I'm not going to take the time to go through the episode, so that episode's done.
Yeah, the character died.
Out. She's,
Yeah,
thank God. Anyway, so that's ghosts. Torture porn. What do you think about torture porn? Does that scare you at all?
No.
Is it silly to you? Does it get to you on any level?
Here's what's happened. It's gotten cringy.
Because it started with Cabin Fever, and then Hostel took it to another level, and now you've got your Truth or Dares, your other sort of...
Hostel?
What is that? Contracted
Hostel,
is a big body horror movie.
What else was there? Hostel and Saw were the ones that I kind of liked because they were so... They were so different.
Just because they're so connected.
Well, and they were so different at the time. When they first came out, it was like, wow, we've never seen this much gore and this like well done gore. Yeah, we've seen guys' heads explode, but it always looks like Play-Doh, or it looks like a balloon inflating or something stupid. But it actually looked like really, really, really good.
Yeah.
So I think that's why I enjoyed. I don't want to call it torture porn, but yeah, it's I would guess Saw and Hostel would be torture porn.
Yeah.
But
well, Bracer is to a degree.
Right. Well, and that's the thing though. See, I liked the vehicle that Saw used. Basically what I'm trying to say is that torture porn, if done right, is great. Just like all horror, any film that's done right is great, and when it's done new and different, I love it. But when it's done repeatedly for no reason, I don't love it. Or if it's done satirically, maybe I do love it. So it like Feast.
Like the Feast or the Final Girls.
Feast or the Final Girls. Like High Tension was one of those films that I ended up really liking, even though I was like totally...
French, no less.
Yeah, well, you know. Je t'aime.
Dave can speak French.
So...
Makes a big difference.
We... also have
Give
great
them a treatment.
Here's a great here's a great example.
Give them a French treatment.
No.
You got to.
No.
You got to.
No.
Come on.
I just did.
Just
no.
give them something. Just say,
no,
hello, I can speak French.
That was it. There you go. That was me begging for torture porn.
He's sitting here with the opportunity to make viewers wet with
No,
Frenchness.
no.
And
Nobody
she's not-
gets wet with Frenchness anymore. Not since World War II. Anyway, the point being that derailment.
Yes. Torture porn.
Yeah.
What did you like about it?
Okay. Here's a good example. To me, one of the most frightening scenes that I ever saw was the scene when the senator's daughter, is in the well in Silence of the Lambs. And there was no physical torture that was being done to the girl. She was just, being talked to, and she was being, treated like an object. And she looked in the wall, and there was like fingernails in the wall. And to me, that was like way scarier than like tying someone up and lighting their feet on fire. Mm-hmm. Like, to me, that's just like, okay, well, this person obviously is toast. But for her, it's more that sort of like on the edge type of thing that I think is more scary than downright, brutal horror. But like I said, when it's done right, it works and it's effective. So that would be like my big example. Like, one of my favorite horror movies is Silence of the Lambs. So, that kind of stuff, that sort of when she's in the darkness and he's got the night vision, like when that was first done in film, for me, that was like, whoa, that's freaky. Mm-hmm. I've been in a dark room like that, reaching around, like she's in a dark room. Like you're there.
Which one are you referring to again?
Silence of the Lambs. At the end of Silence of the Lambs,
they do something similar in Wreck, which is
right. Well, and I enjoyed Wreck
Mm-hmm.
a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I did enjoy the really well done.
We'll get to that in found footage. So.
Found footage.
Yeah.
Well, let's transition right to found footage because I'll be honest, I loved Blair Witch. I loved a lot of Blair Witch-esque
you like Evidence,
knockoffs,
right?
Yeah,
the one that was.
I don't remember that one as much.
So Evidence is on Netflix, but
I do remember it.
It's the one with Steven something or other who was in True Blood. He plays a detective, and the cops section is shot like a film. But then when they review the footage is then they look into and it goes in, and it's the found footage of the event. So it like transitions back and forth between the two. And then, of course, there is what might be my favorite found footage regular movie combination is Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon, where it is a camera crew.
I did watch that one.
Filming a guy claiming to be a slasher.
Yeah.
And telling how he trains, and he's boxing against a thing, and he's like, do you know how hard it is to chase and run after victims,
right?
But act like you're not running.
Yeah,
and like
I always love horror comedy.
Halfway through, they put the camera away in the car, and then the movie's camera raises up as they do that, and it transitions into a regular motion picture for the back half of the film. Like, that's the found footage I love, and that's the found footage I know you appreciate as a filmmaker.
Yeah,
because you've done, was one of those movies found footage? Or no? Which one was?
The Encounter.
Encounter was found footage.
Yeah.
Okay. So go ahead, explain your history. Well, just explain your history with film for the people that don't know. I know we've touched on it before. We've never actually gotten into it. Go ahead. We don't need to get in depth.
See, now I'm on the spot, and I can't remember the one guy who always remembers that I lit myself on fire. He's great.
Dave
I love him.
Lit himself on fire.
Yeah.
Explain why, though. You've dealt. What movies are you talking about that we referred to early on? That you
well, look,
on?
I after film school. Well, during film school, I was given the opportunity to work on a film, and I said, yeah, sure. Of course. What do you want me to do? That was Redemption. Mm-hmm. Mile into Hell is what it ended up getting called.
Very appropriate. It's a Western called Redemption.
Yeah.
Appropriate to nowadays.
It's really funny because Redemption is one of the films that I had so much fun making. Like, I had fun making every film I ever worked on.
This was before Red Dead Redemption had come out.
Right.
This was called Redemption. It was a Western. Red Dead Redemption came out 7 years ago. This movie was filmed probably 9 years ago, right?
More than that. I mean,
was it a decade ago?
It came out by the time it got distributed, it was 2009, I think, 2008. But it was made in 2006.
Okay, so it's been 12 years since you filmed that movie.
Yeah. Oof. And here's what's cool about it. It's so funny when Red Dead Redemption came out. I was like, holy shit, they saw our movie. I really thought that to myself. I'm like, holy shit, they saw our movie. They saw we were trying to make Western more real, more the way it really was. And I, me personally I wasn't involved in the story or any of that kind of stuff. But I definitely identified with the history that the director and the story was trying to tell. And it was different than your typical Western, but it was always also the exact same as every Western. So but that's good, right? It fit the formula, it fit the bones of what a Western is, a guy trying to find redemption for himself after doing something really bad or being a part of something that was really bad. Like I said before, like I do believe that you can stain your soul and that you can look for redemption all your life and never find it. Like even working towards it your whole life, you could still end up in the bad place, which is a great show. So
that was your first movie.
That was the first film that was like I worked on during film school, and I was hired as a slate operator, which if you don't know what a slate operator is, it's the guy who keeps track of what take they're on, and then jumps in front of the camera and goes, take 34. Click.
He does the clacker.
Click.
Now, to be fair, you had worked on a horror movie before any of this when you worked on Hidden Intent and Private Residence with me.
Right.
Did you work on Private Residence?
Of course.
Yeah, you did, right? Yeah, you've never not worked on a thing with me. Jeez, yeah. Well, look, it's been like 25 years.
Producer Dave and director Drew.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
You're
it was always
Cecil
D&D
now.
Productions.
Now
yeah.
it's director Cecil, which is a
D&D
weird
Productions. I know. So yes, we did Hidden Intent, which was a murder mystery. Which
that was while you were in. That's while you were in film class.
Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald stole our shot for one of their shots. Someone clearly saw our movie and they took a shot.
Okay, but can I just let me go back to Redemption?
All right, go ahead.
Simply because Red Dead Redemption 2 has come out.
I'm just trying to relate it back to horror a little bit.
Look, I slept on the floor of an abandoned building in a sleeping bag near Marcia, by the way. Marcia was on the set of Redemption.
Ties in.
And
really, was she?
Yes.
Wow.
Why do you think I was on the set of Redemption?
Because Marcia was there?
No. I mean, that played a part of it, I'm sure, because
history.
There was other girls
Ancient
on set,
history.
let's be honest. But the point being that this was literally
into personal town.
It was a tiny film filmed in this tiny location in the middle of nowhere. The guy who ran the place would come out in the middle of the night in his underwear and a wife beater and be like, "Hey, I saw coyotes like just up the road there, so just make sure you close the door after you go to the bathroom." So it's like, wow, thanks for letting us know. And so, I mean, this was like an experience.
Look out for coyotes when you go to take crap, y'all.
Despite my negative overall experience with all of my films, I had such a great time, and I had such a fun, great experience making films that I just have an eternal appreciation for any independent film. Yeah. But that doesn't mean that just because you work really hard on an independent film, it's any good. Like,
no,
there's a great film called.
We review trailers for movies that are
Yeah.
less than stellar. And sometimes people are like, oh, they worked really hard with their budget. And it's like, great. We still have to be able to give good,
if you
reviews.
look, here's the thing.
Dave is a bit more
I will
forgiving,
shit on
but
your
still.
movie, but if you got it distributed, you know what? Doesn't matter if I
Power
shit on
to
your
you.
movie
Yeah.
because you got it distributed. So, that's ultimately the game, unfortunately, for the audience.
So where did you go from Redemption? Was it straight to Exit to Hell?
No, because again, so I was hired again.
Because this is the Dave podcast.
I volunteered as the
Dave
slate
cast.
operator, and then
At Redemption.
and then they never got around to hiring a first AD.
You guys can look up the poster for Redemption. Look up Redemption and Robert Conway.
Well,
and
I'm
you'll find
not
the poster.
Yeah, but I'm not on the poster.
No, I know.
Yeah.
But you'll find the poster for the movie.
Well, the movie's actually. I would say watch the movie. It's a good.
Really?
I
would
it.
only say watch
still
one
like
Robert
it.
Conway movie.
That would.
And one of them is going to go to a boogie box.
Yeah.
Because
Oh,
I
the
have 2
Exit to Hell?
copies. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to give 1 copy
I
of
liked
Exit to Hell
Hell.
to a Boogie Box.
Hey, I
It's
was
not
I was the
bad.
production designer
No.
on that film. All right.
Dude, I'm giving Exit to Hell credit where credit's
All
due. But, God,
Well,
the
that's
rest of
the
the movies
credit
were
I got.
dog shit, though. The rest
Look,
of everything was
look.
dog shit.
All of them, if taken with a grain of salt, are passable.
No.
Because
No.
they all got
No,
distribution. So that means
That doesn't mean anything.
yes, it means they were able to
No,
cut together a good trailer.
No, it means that a guy thought that this guy's movies were sellable, and they're not. Like, they are to some extent, but only
Well, let's not.
only in the Mystery
All right.
Science Theater of
Whatever.
it all.
Point being is
He's perfect Mystery MST3K material. I'll say that.
Yeah, but
Honestly, we should start
anyway,
doing that.
so
we
yeah.
should do horror MST3K and start with those movies.
Well, I had a lot of fun making, like I said, Redemption, Exit to Hell, which is what was called Sickle at the beginning. See, that's the other thing. I was hired. I never got to finish the sentence. 40
Sorry.
seconds ago.
Sorry.
I was hired as Slate, and they never ended up hiring someone to be first AD because they thought that between the guy that was running camera and the guy that was directing it, they'd be able to manage the set. But what ended up happening was they, like any film, they got behind on schedule, and they needed someone to help them stay on schedule. So they said, "Hey,
Stay on target.
will you be AD?" And I said, "Yeah, just tell me what to do." So I got to be AD, and so. If you don't know what an assistant director does, it's everything that the director doesn't. So if you think about all the stuff that has to be done on a set, physically, verbally, right as a film.
Everything the director would want, but the director can't focus on because he's working with the actors.
Right. And I'm sort of like the vocal piece of the director for the background actors, which is what we had a lot of on Redemption. And so...
Dude, it's like stuck. Oh, that's why.
That is so cool. Oh, nice. So, like on Redemption, we had a lot of
And it's done. Worthwhile.
You call them background actors unless you're a dick, and if you're a dick, you call them extras. Now,
They're not just... really? You
If
only
you're-
call them extras if you're a dick?
yeah, if you're a dick, you call them extras, or you call them the mob, or you call them some other fucking
the mob is tough.
degrading fucking the
Extras, I don't think
cattle.
is that bad, the mob.
Well-
Ooh, the mob and cattle. Is
Yeah,
tough.
cattle because people
Bring in the chattel.
essentially second and third directors are usually called wranglers because all their job is to wrangle people because
Because they're
it
the
requires
more set pieces. They're
well
not the-
look, if 100 people
in-depth
if 10
acting.
people show up to do a background scene, which means the people who are walking around in the background of the town while the two people are having a conversation. So what you need is people who can do the exact same movements and action
100
over
times.
and over and over. That's what you need. And it's not for the simpleton. It's not, that's why you call them background players, because they're not extras. They are important. And this is the lesson I learned on Redemption from the sarcastic outlaw, who was named in the script but had no lines, but seemed to have a connection with the character. And so imagine Cecil is having a conversation with the skeleton guy here, all right?
Hey.
And I just happen to be in camera frame, and my character's name is Sarcastic Outlaw, and I'm drinking at the bar, and every once in a while I decide I need to look over and give a glance and ruin a take. That's what we call ruining a take, because now you can't use that take because the background person changed up what they were doing, or they're drawing focus from where the director wants the focus of the conversation to be. And this guy, I don't want to call him out because you never know.
Who was it?
But he was wearing the striped shirt, okay? And so he was so visible compared to everybody else. No one else was wearing a striped shirt. So he was like, hey, there's the guy in the striped shirt. Hey, there's the guy in the striped shirt again. And it's like, hey, man, you were already in this scene. Vamos! And so he became my nemesis. And the crew had a lot of fun. And because of the way I am, obviously you know the way I am.
Passive aggressive.
No, not just passive aggressive.
Not just passive aggressive.
No, I'm not. Yeah, I'm not like that.
Go ahead, continue.
But that, like, I will make a fool of myself in the 9th hour to relieve tension, to make everybody laugh, to try to get them all back.
You're an everyman's hero at times like that.
So
you get the energy back up.
I really took to this role as AD, and it was like, he's like, your job is to take care of the crew and make sure that the extras are doing the right thing.
Sweet too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
you co-directed essentially. I mean, you ran all the camera.
Yeah. I mean,
that's ADing.
What did we do? I mean, it is what it is.
You
like
were a
that,
mishmash of like 4 jobs.
That's why I like Producer Dave, because producer encompasses like, hey, I did everything, not all by myself, but I had a hand or had a piece of everything, and that I never did all the writing, I never did all the directing, I never did all the camera, I never did all the lighting, but I was a part of everything, and that's why I've always liked producer, because that's what encompasses a producer, and that's what I tried to be on.
You're a Dave of all trades.
Well, and then there's also the producer brings money, which is, let's transition. Okay, so I loved working on, there's all these great stories from Redemption. Listen.
We need to get to the horror.
Listen.
We need to get to the
if
horror
you can somehow find the commentary of Redemption, you should listen to it because it's a lot of fun. You should watch Redemption. I recommend you pay for it. If you've got extra money, if you don't have extra money, well, I'm sure you can find it somewhere. But the point being that I had a lot of fun making it, and that led me to Exit to Hell, which, again, the thing that I kind
Kane Hodder movie.
Yeah, well,
give proper credit.
Well,
tell everyone what Exit to Hell is.
The thing that I got kind of like, the only thing that I didn't like about ADing was that I wasn't involved in the pre-production of the film. I kind of was. That
wasn't because you were an AD. That was because.
No,
the guy involved wouldn't involve you.
No. I mean, once I was made AD, I hadn't been involved in the pre-production, so I didn't have like all of the information. It's the same thing that frustrates me with the job that I have now. Like sometimes it's hard for the guy on the ground who's willing to break his back to do the job if he doesn't have all the information. So the point being that when I was called up for Exit to Hell, it was sort of like last minute. Everything had just fallen apart for the director and the whole production team. And they're like, hey, the money, the $80,000 or $100,000 or whatever it was that they had raised, backed out at the last second because the director refused to compromise with the producers who were putting up the money. And so, which, it's good or bad, whatever you want it to be. If the characters aren't likable, the characters are likable, I don't know. The point being that he came to me and said, hey, man, I'm looking to raise some money for this film. I got all these pieces in place. I got Tiffany Shepis, and Tiffany Shepis brought us Kane Hodder, and Kane Hodder brought us Rena Riffle. And so he started naming all these people. So I'm like, I don't know any of these people. He's like, well, Kane Hodder was Jason. I'm like, Jason wearing a mask? Like, I wasn't impressed. Nice. Okay, I'm sorry, Kane. I wasn't impressed. So I was like, okay. And I'm like, what's the deal? And he's like, I got this place. And then he emailed me and he showed me the place he got. And I'm like, no, the fucking Cleator. Oh. Cleator, Arizona. And I'm like, ooh. I'm like, because see, the thing is with Redemption, one of the best things about Redemption is we had the desert. We had this old West town. We had all this production value for nothing. Mm-hmm. And so he's like, I got this new place. He's like,
the old West town that was burned down by the time we wanted to film Sweet.
Well, it had been.
That was where you
fire.
filmed it, though, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that was Cowtown.
In Cowtown, where we went and scouted.
Yeah.
And it was just, we was like, no, we can't do this here.
So anyway,
what a trip.
Well, and they also filmed Dead Man at Cowtown.
Oh, okay.
There's a couple
Johnny
scenes.
Depp one?
Yeah, there's a couple scenes filmed there at Cowtown. It's funny, that bench. I sat on that bench many times before seeing Dead Man, and then I watched Dead Man. I'm like, holy shit, it's the bench. I sat on that bench.
That was Bruce Willis and Johnny Depp, right?
I don't know if Bruce Willis was in it. It was definitely Johnny Depp, though.
I know it was Johnny Depp.
It was a Jim Jarmusch.
No, it was a different black and white Western.
Yeah, it was a Jim Jarmusch film. It was fantastic.
Like
if you haven't seen Dead Man, that's another great one.
Like that.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway. Mm-hmm. So he goes, hey, I'm looking for someone to help me raise some film money for this, as an associate producer or co-producer or whatever it is you bring in. Now, if you don't understand the film business, basically the film business is if you have money, then you can be an executive producer. If you know people who have money, you can be a producer. And if you know people who have money, you can be an associate or a co-producer. Mm-hmm. So I knew a guy who had some money, so I became a co-producer on the film, and he invested some coin. And it was enough to convince another investor that he wouldn't be the only one putting up all the money for it. So they kind of went in 50-50 or whatever it was. I don't know all the details. I was kept out of it. And so the point being that I brought in this guy, and so that earned me a job, and I ended up being originally the second AD on Exit to Hell, or Sickle as it was called.
Mm-hmm.
And
at the time, yeah, Sickle.
And what I really liked about it, I did like the script. I'll be honest, I did like the script. I did have problems with my own personal, like how I would do stuff. But here's the thing. I've always found myself to be an artistic person, but I also really respect other people's artistic outlets and creative endeavors. So if it's someone else's project, I don't want to put too much of me into it. I want to help them make their vision as much as possible, whether it's your vision or it's his vision or it's someone else's vision like Kiara. Mm-hmm. I want to bring the best out of people and artists specifically. And so that's the role I tried to assume with this thing. Like, I wanted to be the guy for the director and the AD and all these other guys, because it was a much bigger project than the first film. And I had no problem with my role. I'm cool. I'm going to be the background acting guy. It's a good step for learning how to direct people, and you get to talk to all these extras, and it's a great network opportunity. It's a great networking opportunity because you get to meet this up-and-coming, potentially cinematographer. You get to meet these up-and-coming crew guys. So, this was all, on paper, looking great, So I had no problem signing off and bringing in not really my friend, but a friend of a friend who meant a lot to me. And so that's how I got involved in that. And then, of course, because it was pieced together, it all kind of fell apart after the first week. Spent a week in a strip club shooting the opening scene. Mm-hmm. And that was a lot of fun, I'll be honest. I'm not going to lie. If you can find a way to put a strip club scene into your film, go for it.
It's a good week's worth of shooting.
Male or female.
I was the photographer on set for that week.
Yeah.
It was good stuff.
Yeah, you got some peripheral benefits. I mean, that's what it's about, right?
On-set photographer at the strip club, golden opportunity.
So, everything kind of fell apart after that first week because the thing is, when you're shooting with a guy like Kane Hodder, you obviously have to be SAG. Tiffany Shepis, Rena Riffle, they're all SAG. Dustin, they're all SAG. So you have to have a SAG contract, which means you have to follow rules. Now, when you're an independent filmmaker, the best way to save money is to break rules because rules cost you money. And so the director was constantly in these situations where, he had to lose certain things and compromise certain things, and the script had to change because, quite frankly, we had 2 hours to shoot 3 pages, and
2 hours to shoot 3 pages.
Well, when you have
having shot an 8-page short over 4 days.
Look, there's
Jesus
plenty
Christ.
of.
We shot 2 pages a day for Sweet.
No, I know, but we had already shot 3 pages that day,
well,
and we still had 2 pages to shoot with 2 hours.
Like
the point being that there is something to be said. That a disclaimer needs to be said when you're getting hired onto an independent film that says, look, I might ask you to work 20 hours in a day and not bitch about it and not get paid and not get extra anything except food and maybe a place to sleep. So if I can't even provide you the food and the place to sleep, you are free to walk off. But if you sign up to do an independent film and you get asked to work that 16th hour or you get asked to do something which was, in my opinion, absolutely, if you were on a union film, called for. So the cinematographer did not want to man the camera while there was a shotgun being shot towards the camera. Now, it was a blank, but despite it being a blank, if you don't know, a blank still shoots powder. Mm-hmm. And the powder, like, if you shot a blank against your eye or against the side of your head, you're going to do damage, no matter how you do it. But if you're 10, 15 feet away, the worst you're going to feel is it kind of feels like someone's throwing sand at your face.
Right.
And it can lead to just some discomfort. Well, our piece of plexiglass wasn't big enough for the cinematographer, and it led to a fight. And there were some things said that ultimately couldn't be unsaid, and it led to the cinematographer walking from the picture the next day once we were all the way up in Cleaner with Kane Hodder on set. The cinematographer decided to walk. And he's like, if this is how the set's going to be run, I don't want to be a part of it. Now, I can empathize with his reasons. He didn't want to be he didn't want to work 12, 16, 20 hours, 24 hours, 28 hours, which was our longest day, 28 hours. He didn't want to work those hours, and I can't blame him for that. But he was getting paid, and he had a camera operator. He was allowed to hire his own camera operator. So he was in a position to, somewhat coast through this whole thing. Like, he could have just gotten paid, and he could be like, look, this is all the time you got, this is it, and then walk away. But he did what he had to do. Like I said, there's a certain attitude that you can have when you make films. The attitude that I had was, I don't care if I get maimed or injured. I just want to make movies. Mm-hmm. And some people are like, well, this is my job and, all this other stuff.
Now, this movie still these stories still ended up resulting in what I consider the best movie that you ended up working on out of the ones that you did.
I mean, Exit to Hell ended up, that's the thing. Each of the movies that I worked on went through post-production nightmares. And that's the thing that you don't hear stories about, because you don't hear stories about independent films that go through 2 or 3 years of post-production, because A, they run out of money, B, they can't find distribution, or C, they're not finished. You raised $50,000 for your movie, but your movie cost $150,000. So, you shoot as much as you can, hope for the best. Hope you can raise more money off the trailer you can cut together. This is what's done in the industry. This is how you make your film. If you want to make a film, you do it by any means necessary. And I sympathize and I empathize and I get it, and I was a part of it. But I also think that there's definitely something like Exit to Hell that everyone can enjoy. Like, there's aspects of Exit to Hell that are part of all the movies that we love. Like, for example, I'll tell you the story of my first day on set with Kane Hodder, which we had shot. Actually, we had shot a full week already, 6 days. We had shot 2 days at this little apartment for this one scene, and then we shot the strip club during the week. We had a day off, and then we moved up to Cleator. And then Cleator is in the middle of nowhere, Arizona. It's literally the scary-ass fucking town that you break down in. The only business is bar, literally called Bar, and it's got 4 seats and a couple of booths, and they serve beer and whiskey and maybe some tequila if you know the guy. Its population outnumbered by the guns in town. There was 13 people who lived in this town, and they were amazing, awesome people. The ones who would come out of their caves were super nice and sweet. And I would recommend touristing to Cleator, Arizona, any day of the week to have a beer at Bar. It's been a long time. There might be new people in charge. I don't know. You got to go if you're going up to another great place to go in Arizona. I can't remember what it's called. Point being that if you have an amazing location, if you have the opportunity to work with someone who will bring in the horror audience, you have the makings of a horror film. And so it seemed like both films I had worked on up to that point were like, hey, these are the things that, you know, get you going places. You know, this is the one that'll get us noticed or whatever. And really, or get you noticed so that I could get another job. So that's really the perspective that I was enjoying these things. And then what happened towards the end of the film was, I mean, the film, like I said, it was hodgepodge together in a way. And it was also sort of like, hey, we planned all this stuff with X budget, but we only got Y budget, so let's make do. And a lot of people let us down, honestly, despite not having the budget. I mean, people who had promised to have things ready, people who had promised props and all this other stuff, just vaporized with their budget. And so, you know, it's the best of both worlds. It's the worst of both coins. You know, like the director was hampered by people who literally took thousands of dollars from him and gave him nothing, and other people who were breaking their backs, you know, and he couldn't pay them a cent because he had spent all his money on this other guy who screwed him. So one of the reasons why I got a production designer credit on the film was because I stepped up and I made up for the guy who was originally the production designer. And it sucks because, you know, I basically get credit for a lot of their work, but a lot of their work that they didn't do, I was responsible for. So, you know, that's ultimately how that played out. And also because I brought in my friend who helped make the movie happen. So, you know, when you see producer in a film or a co-producer or any of that stuff, those people get that credit because they earned it in a way. And so, like, that made me really happy about working on that film, despite what ended up happening to it, which was, you know, nobody was interested in this version of the film. And so there was a lot of re-editing and reshooting, and eventually it got distributed, and it ended up on Netflix and Redbox, and, you know, hooray, let's make another one. But, you know, in the end, it costs so much money, and it led to all these things, these horrible people.
Well, I tell you what, before we get into that, let's call this as a part one.
Torture porn. That's as far as we got.
We got ghosts and torture porn, but honestly, we're getting some juicy history from producer Dave here. So I'm gonna call this as a part one, and I think we may continue recording as a part two after a bit of a break.
All right.
But yeah, this is juicy. I like this. Thank you, Dave, for opening up.
There you go.
Thank you guys very much for watching.
If you're looking for the exit to hell.
Yeah. We will be back with
more
redemption. True horror stories.
Yeah. If you want to see a broken spirit,
look no further than producer Dave.
No, just kidding.
All right, guys. That's going to do it for part one. Join us back here very soon for part two. Thanks very much for watching. I'm Cecil Laird.
And I'm producer Dave.
And remember,
stay scared.